Are you ready for the 10th annual Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill 2021? I know I am. I'm Sarah Tompkins, and I began my rare disease journey as an Ehlers-Danlos patient advocate in 2015. When I attended Rare Disease Week for the first time in 2017, I felt the energy of joining one another in DC and the excitement of being able to make a difference, not only for myself, but for others as well. Whether this will be your first time attending or your 10th, we hope that you'll take full advantage of everything Rare Disease Week has to offer, including the Rare Artist Gallery, the Legislative Conference, networking hours, and meetings with your legislators. This week is about learning how policy can speed the development and access to diagnostics and treatments. This week is also about lifting one another up and encouraging each other on our rare disease journeys. We need more than hope, we need action. I am so honored to join each of you for Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill 2021.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am going to share my screen now. And I would like to thank Horizon, our presenting sponsor for today, and also introduce Dr. Padre Barrick. She is a physician scientist with extensive development expertise in the biotech industry. At Horizon Therapeutics, Dr. Padre Barrick leads the clinical development function dedicated to bringing medicines for rare autoimmune and severe inflammatory diseases to patients. Thank you so much for being here today, please go ahead.
Okay. Hello, everyone. As Shannon stated, I am currently the Senior Vice President of Clinical Development at Horizon Therapeutics, and it is really my sincere pleasure in welcoming all of you here to the Rare Disease Week Legislative Conference. We're all here today for the same reason, because we are committed to making a powerful difference for people affected by and living with rare disease. If we ever needed a better reminder about the importance of our work, the past 18 months has reflected this in an extraordinary way. The pandemic shed light on how the healthcare industry can better serve caregivers and people living with diseases and their families. From making advancements in telemedicine to finding creative ways to sustain clinical trial evaluations, our industry continued to find new ways to keep patients at the center of all we do to the best of our abilities. For the nearly 30 million individuals in the United States living with rare disease, this experience accelerated our work to effect change in public policy that affect this population. We are proud to be with all of you today as the presidential sponsor of Rare Disease Week, to amplify the voices of the rare disease community and work of the dedicated advocates with policymakers in Washington, D.C. This work and this week is critical, as it is an opportunity for rare disease patient advocates like you to tell your stories. Your stories have a huge impact on the legislators that you'll be meeting with and will help shape the future of rare disease policy. At Horizon, we believe in using science and compassion to research and develop medicines for those with rare disease, autoimmune, and inflammatory disorders. We are driven by a clear purpose: to improve the lives of people living with these diseases, and we are dedicated to helping them wherever they are on their journey, be it at diagnosis or during their ongoing care. This commitment extends well beyond our internal pipeline. Through our Rare Is program, we aim to elevate the faces, voices, and experiences of all people living with rare diseases. In partnership with the Every Life Foundation, we launched the Rare Is Scholarship last year, a 5-year program that aims to eliminate the financial barriers for adults who are pursuing education. It's through these kinds of partnerships that our industry can foster greater equity for the rare disease community. So thank you to Every Life Foundation for your partnership and for allowing us to participate in this conference. Your dedication in advancing and developing treatments for people living with rare disease through science-driven public policy is celebrated by those of us here today. We look forward to this week's conversations and helping to raise the voices of the rare disease community. Through this dialogue, we can ensure that public policy creates and enacts change. And with that, I'd like to say welcome again to the Rare Disease Week Legislative Conference. And I'd now like to turn it over to Shannon von Felden, who will be kicking off the legislative ask portion of the program. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you to Sarah Tompkins for serving as the Advocacy Chair for Rare Disease Week. We also would like to thank our sponsors, Sanofi Genzyme as well. And all of our sponsors of Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill 2021. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the Legislative Conference for Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill 2021. Today and tomorrow, you will have opportunities to learn about policy and legislation that impacts the rare disease community and how you can make a difference. We also hope that even though we are virtual, you can connect and network with other advocates. Throughout Rare Disease Week, you will see the EveryLife staff virtually. We all want to ensure this is an amazing experience for you all. Please reach out to us in chats, on the networking lounge, or by email if you have any questions or would like to speak with any of us. We also have closed captioning and translation services available. For the English language closed captioning, please click the transcript button at the bottom of your screen and select the add subtitles. For the English to Spanish translations, click the link posted in the chat box. I hope you have already had a chance to explore the platform that we are using for Rare Disease Week. It has many features, including a schedule of events and the speakers list, networking with advocates in the chat and the networking lounge, the resource library, which has the one-pagers, as well as the exhibitors page, FAQs, and social wall. If you haven't had a chance, I highly encourage you to take a look at everything that is offered on the platform. In addition, even though we can't be in person this year together, we are excited to have so many opportunities to connect with one another. You can chat with other advocates during the sessions using the chat function. You can send messages to other advocates on their attendee profiles. We hope that you will attend the networking happy hour today at 4 p.m. Eastern and the networking brunch tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. And you can join the conversation in the networking lounge located on the navigation pane. And if you haven't already started playing the Rare Disease Week scavenger hunt, over 100 people already are. The scavenger hunt is located on the platform. Keep an eye and ear out for codes on slides, announced at events, or emailed to you depending on the challenge. Click on the gamification icon on the navigation pane, find the challenge, enter the code, and click submit. At the end of Rare Disease Week, the top 50 point earners will be awarded a grant for their rare disease organization of choice, totaling $100,000 awarded by the EveryLife Foundation. And you can also find on the platform our exhibitors with the organizations and learn more or connect with them directly. And if you have been to Rare Disease Week before, you are already familiar with the amazing Rare Disease Week program booklet. You can find the e-version in the resource library on the platform, which has an overview of the events, the legislative conference agenda, overview of the legislative asks, and advocacy tips. And don't forget about social media. Use the hashtag RareDC2021 to share your experience during Rare Disease Week. And you could win our social media contest, which includes winning a travel stipend for Rare Disease Week 2022. And now let's jump into the legislative asks for 2021. Every year, RDLA provides suggested legislative asks for the Hill meetings advocates will be participating in. Today, we have experts on the legislative asks joining us. To go into more detail about each of those asks, we have Jay Eberly with Senator Barrasso's office to speak on the Access to Genetic Counselor Services Act, Sally Farrington Thompson with Senator Wicker's office on the Benefit Act, Dylan Simon with the Every Life Foundation on the Newborn Screening Saves Lives Reauthorization Act, Jamie Sullivan with the Every Life Foundation on the Speeding Therapy Access Today Act, and Caitlin Van Sant with Congressman G.K. Butterfield to talk about the Rare Disease Caucus. Thank you all for being here today. Jamie, why don't you get us started with learning more about the STAT Act?
Great. Thanks, Shannon, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. I'm really excited to be with you. I believe that many of you have been familiar, have heard about the STAT Act in the past sessions, either the Rare Disease Week training session, or you may remember the STAT Act if you participated in past events like the Rare Across America held earlier this year. So hopefully this will be a little bit of a review. And just as a reminder, we'll also cover a deep dive into the STAT Act later in the conference today at 3 p.m. So I'm going to just touch on the highlights. And then we look forward to diving in deeper about all of the core functions of the STAT Act later on today. So for those of you who haven't heard of it, what is the STAT Act? It is the Speeding Therapy Access Today Act of 2021. And the STAT Act is a bipartisan bill. It's most important to stress, it was created with the rare disease community, and it is aimed at improving the development of and access to therapies for the rare disease community. So we started convening the community a number of years ago. It is, community-led, conceived by a number of different engagements, both our scientific conference with our community Congress, that is our network of patient advocacy organizations and industry and other rare disease stakeholder partners who came together and said, how do we prioritize solutions for the challenges that are facing rare disease therapeutic development? We know that there are approximately 93 to 95% of rare diseases that have no approved therapy, and that is just one of the solutions we're trying to solve with the STAT Act. So the STAT Act was introduced in March of 2021. It's HR 1730 and S 670. And at its core, the most important function of the STAT Act will be to create a new Rare Disease Center of Excellence. You may have heard the language Intercenter Institute. Those terms are interchangeable. Intercenter Institute is the actual legislative term that is used starting with 21st Century Cures that gives the FDA the authority to create these, what we call centers of excellence. And the purpose is to improve rare disease coordination, stakeholder engagement, and policy development within the FDA by really bringing together the expertise that exists across the different centers now that are reviewing the new therapeutic, new applications, both for drugs, biologics, and devices. So it brings a home together for rare disease at the FDA. Within that home, the STAT Act also includes important policies like the creation of a rare disease advisory committee to bring outside expertise together, including a robust component from patients and patient advocates that are going to be able to serve as a source of expertise for the FDA staff as they consider policy development, clinical trial design issues, endpoint selections, and other really complicated rare disease regulatory policy challenges. In addition to the advisory committee, the STAT Act creates the Altitude program, which is a program to focus on the unique challenges of ultra rare diseases and small population development, and that would authorize grants to fund challenging research into ultra rare policies. And we also have a provision in the STAT Act that will create a third-party payer program to focus on the access piece. So we're very much focused on the treatment development part, but also we recognize that we need to start identifying solutions as innovative therapies come out to then translate that into access for those that can benefit from them. And so within the STAT Act, we also propose strengthening rare disease patient access to FDA-approved therapies in both public and commercial plans by enhanced FDA and CMS communication earlier in the process to really be proactive in engaging payers. It's a voluntary program, and to just strengthen that Medicare and Medicaid access by increased communication, sharing of data, and hopefully overcoming some of those barriers that lead to delays in access decisions, coverage decisions after these novel therapies get approved. So that's a really quick overview of what's in the STAT Act. Like I said, we're going to get into more on each of those components later in the session. But where we're at currently, right now, as I said, it was introduced in March, and we are working very closely with some of the people you see on this call and our champions in the Rare Disease Caucus to advance the bill. And we were pleased to say that one component of the bill, the Rare Disease Center of Excellence, was indeed included in a recent discussion draft of Cures 2.0 that we hope we'll see move in the House. So the STAT Act pieces of it are catching on. We have 19 co-sponsors, and you'll learn a little bit more about the status and what we're doing to move STAT Act through the legislative process later today. So Shannon, with that, I'll hand it back to you, but happy to answer any questions and look forward to talking more later on.
Great, thank you, Jamie. We'll do questions at the end, so if anyone does have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and if we have time, I'll make sure to ask the speakers during the Q&A portion. Dylan, would you like to go ahead and tell us more about the Newborn Screening Safe Lives Act?
Yeah, I would be happy to. Again, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to discuss the Newborn Screening Saves Lives Reauthorization Act. There's been a lot of exciting updates since last Rare Disease Week. So a little bit of background about newborn screening and the importance of this legislation. So newborn screening is a vital public health program that tests all babies within the first few days of life. And approximately 1 in 300 newborns has a condition that can be detected through newborn screening. And this early detection allows for early treatment and can help to prevent intellectual and physical disabilities and life-threatening illnesses. And so it's really important to bring about the reauthorization of these federal programs, because it will help to improve this vital public health program that contacts every family, every baby around the country. And so a little bit update in terms of like what exactly is in the bill. And so a key part of the bill, it does reauthorize HRSA grants to the states, and that's really important because newborn screening, there's a lot of it is done at the state level, and these HRSA grants help to improve the screening programs, help to educate parents and healthcare providers, and help to improve follow-up care for infants with detected conditions. In addition, the reauthorization will help to improve these grants and expand the scope. For example, it'll help to address the issue within follow-up services where too often you'll have families who are contacted to come in for confirmation and diagnostic testing that are lost in that process. And so these HRSA grants will help to decrease how often that happens by providing additional funding to find out how we can improve the education around that. In addition, it would reauthorize the Secretary's Advisory Committee on Hereditary Disorders in Newborns and Children. And so while the Advisory Committee is currently sitting as a discretionary committee, the reauthorization would help again to improve the way that the Advisory Committee works, including helping to improve transparency on how it reviews conditions for the recommended uniform screening panel. In addition, the reauthorization helps to direct the National Academy of Medicine to conduct a study on how to modernize newborn screening program. This is really important because at the federal level, newborn screening is still a relatively young program. The original reauthorization passed in 2008, and so this is a great opportunity to really reevaluate the newborn screening system and see if it's ready for the influx of conditions that many expect within the next 5 to 10 years. And so in terms of where we are, the bill was introduced in both the House and the Senate. The lead sponsors in the House were Congresswoman Logan Allard, Mike Simpson, Kathleen Clark, and Jimmy Herrera Butler, as well as our lead sponsors in the Senate, which was Senator Maggie Hassan and Senator Roger Wicker. And so we were really thankful to our lead sponsors this year, and they did introduce bills with identical language, which was really great to see. And the really important update on the House side was that we did see the bill pass a few weeks ago, actually on June 23rd, which is really exciting to see. And we're happy to see it continue to move and continue to progress. But it is worth noting that last session, The House also did pass the Newborn Screening Saves Lives Reauthorization Act. And so while it's always great to see this legislation get passed, we recognize that we're still waiting to see if we can get this bill passed in the Senate, which is where we had issues last session. And so the plus side of working in the Senate is we do have great champions, one of which is on the call, and we'll speak a little later on a separate bill. But we also have spoken with the Senate Help Committee, and they do say that it is a priority this year. And so we're really looking forward to working with our champions on the Senate side to try to get this passed. And I think it's important to note why we've had some issues in the Senate. Many of you who have long worked on this issue are well aware of the informed consent, the proposed informed consent amendment. And we'll talk in a lot more detail about this at the deep dive around the Newborn Screening Reauthorization Act tomorrow, but I just wanted to briefly discuss it, that the proposed amendment will require parents to opt in to show their newborn's, unidentified blood spot to be used for research. And it would create a huge burden for the program and for research purposes. And so we're continuing to work with champions in the Senate to try to ensure that this amendment is not included. And again, we'll talk more about this in the deep dive. And so thank you so much for being here today. And I'll pass it back to Shannon.
Great, thank you, Dylan. Sally, we'd love to hear about the Benefit Act, which has a mouthful of a title.
It does. Thanks, Shannon, and thank you all for logging on and participating in Rare Disease Week. Like Shannon said, my name is Sally, and I work for Senator Wicker of Mississippi. I've done health policy for him a few years now, but I've never seen him as passionate about health priorities as he is with his rare disease one. So it's been a great opportunity for me to learn as a staffer when you have a boss that's so engaged in this. And before I get into benefit, I'll just share a couple years ago, Senator Wicker became the Senate Republican co-chair for the Rare Disease Caucus. And this has really allowed him to build on his prior work and to just to grow more in this area. But he's been involved in this since the early 2000s, and previous legislation he's championed has been incorporated into big packages like the 21st Century Cures Act. And so I think this Congress is a great opportunity for all of these different bills for us to get into new packages coming through. But benefit, otherwise known as Better Empowerment Now to Enhance Framework and Improve Treatments Act, is a bill that Senator Wicker introduced with Senator Klobuchar. They've introduced it for a few Congresses, and we really are hoping that this year this iteration will be included in a package. So I know you're going to get a really in-depth talk on benefit later on, and I think by another former Wicker staffer. So I'll keep this really high level, but I think the benefit does exactly what the name says. Who is being powered? It's the patients. And what does their empowerment accomplish? Well, it enhances the FDA review process, which we hope will lead to better treatments for patients. There has been progress made in including patient perspective during FDA review processes and approval processes, but there's not really been a law to require the FDA to incorporate this type of data in their risk benefit analysis tools. So this is what benefit does. And I guess I'll kind of give three main reasons why I think this is great. If you take away anything, it would be these three things about benefit. Number one, it gives patients a voice. And we all know how important that is. And it's really essential that patients be able to share their experiences when FDA is looking at different drugs and treatments. And then number two, it's also great because it really just builds off past legislation. The FDA has already been doing some of this work, so it's not a super difficult thing for them to get on board with, but we just want it to become law so that it always will be that way and it will benefit patients for forever. So it really is just the next step in making sure the FDA continues using patient data in their analyses. And then finally, which someone else touched on before, is that this bill is bipartisan. And that's why it's so great to work on a lot of these issues in rare disease, because it's something that both sides, all sides, can get behind and support. And we know as co-sponsors how important it is that patients and patients' families are engaged in the FDA's processes. And so I think that benefit is something that we should all be able to get behind. And that's really kind of all I have to say about benefit. But just for the advocates, I'd say thank you. And we can't do this work without y'all. Speaking as a Senate staffer or congressional staffer, we do what we can, but really the advocacy is what gets the rest of our colleagues on board with these issues. And so I just want to thank you for being engaged in this week. And if y'all have any questions, I'll be happy to answer afterwards. That's it, Shannon.
Thank you, Sally, and thank you to you and your Ross for all of your leadership on the Benefit Act. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Jay to talk about the Access to Genetic Counselor Services Act.
Hello, I'm Jay Eberly. I work for Senator John Barrasto, a physician and senator from Wyoming. And again, here to talk to you about the Access to Genetic Counselor Services Act, S1450, which Senator Barrasso was very proud to introduce with Senator Tester, a Democrat from Montana. This legislation is actually quite simple. The bill allows certified genetic counselors to have what we term direct access to Medicare, which means that they can accept Medicare patients and Medicare patients they can bill Medicare for their services. Senator Barrasso has long been an advocate for the rare disease community. We also help co-chair the Rural Health Caucus here in the Senate. And this is kind of part of a number of different bills that we've done to kind of update and make Medicare, improve Medicare for beneficiaries. Some folks may not understand or know that there are certain healthcare professionals, especially those that are a little bit newer, that didn't exist maybe 20 or 30 years ago, that can't actually participate in the Medicare program. And that, of course, creates access issues and barriers to care for seniors across the country. And so the legislation, again, just allows certified genetic counselors, there's about 5,000 of them currently in the United States, to bill Medicare directly and serve Medicare patients directly, which expands access, especially in rural communities where, frankly, we have shortages of lots of different healthcare providers, but especially geneticists. We just don't have, we have hardly any in Wyoming, and there are large chunks of rural America that obviously face the same challenges. Before coming to the Senate, as I said, Senator Barrasso was a physician and still is, and was very active in something called the Wyoming Health Fairs. And a big part of the health fairs were low cost blood screenings. And Senator Barrasso really believed in that mission because, as he says, the blood screenings allowed patients to get information that they could use to make better informed healthcare decisions. And we think that this legislation complements that work very nicely, in the sense that we want patients to be able to seek out information. And obviously, as genetic testing improves and becomes much more integrated into the healthcare system, we want patients to have that option to go seek out those types of tests and get those professionally interpreted so they can understand better and more fully the types of diseases and conditions that they face. So again, the legislation just simply allows certified genetic counselors to help Medicare patients and bill Medicare directly. And we think this is a good thing for seniors, and just gives people more power, more control over their own healthcare decisions. So thank you so much for having me today, and happy to answer questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jay. I appreciate it. And finally, we have Caitlin Van Sant to talk about the Rare Disease Congressional Caucus.
Hi, everyone. My name is Caitlin. I'm Congressman Butterfield's Legislative Director. My boss is a co-chair of the bipartisan bicameral Rare Disease Caucus, along with Congressman Bilirakis and Senators Wicker and Klobuchar. And I'm here to tell you today what the Rare Disease Caucus is and why your representatives should join. So generally speaking, a caucus is a forum for members of Congress and staff to voice constituent concerns, educate each other, collaborate on ideas, facilitate conversations amongst various stakeholder groups, and build support for different policy and legislative ideas. The Congressional Rare Disease Caucus does all those things for rare disease issues. So voices concerns that we hear from our constituents who have rare diseases or family members have rare diseases, collaborate on different ideas with groups like the Every Life Foundation, facilitate conversations between medical groups and patient groups, and build support for legislation like the bills that we just heard about. The caucus holds quarterly briefings every year. In 2020, we had ones on accelerating rare disease innovation, from discovery to access, the rare disease community experience with COVID, saving lives on newborn screening and diagnostic testing, and then on Cures 2.0. Currently, we have 184 members of the Rare Disease Caucus, 27 senators, and 157 representatives. In the House, we have almost all the states, 45 states plus DC and Puerto Rico are represented. The only states we don't have House members as part of the caucus are Hawaii, Alaska, North Dakota, Wyoming, and Montana. So hopefully in your visits and calls, you'll be able to pick up a couple new members. Although Wyoming, Montana, and North Dakota do have senators in the caucus. If you want to see if your member of Congress is already a member of the caucus, you can go to www.rarecaucus.org. So when you do your visits, please ask your member to join the caucus. It's very, very low time commitment from them and their staff. It's just really to share ideas. And it's a great forum for members and staff to learn more about rare disease. So thank you so much for having me today, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Caitlin, and thank you to you and your boss for your leadership on the Rare Disease Caucus. You guys are amazing to work with. So now I'll open it up for questions. Jamie, we did receive one question in the chat about the STAT Act being introduced earlier this year. And what would you say is the biggest challenge for the bill?
Sure, well, great question. So it's been a very busy, we're a few months since it was introduced. We're pleased by the progress. We have been having many different meetings with committee members who would need to hear the bill. And I think the biggest challenge is just raising awareness about the need for the Centers of Excellence and clarifying how indeed the Centers of Excellence would relate to other divisions within the FDA, other centers, and just it really convincing people of the need and why, how it would be different from other centers that are have been created in the last 2 years. There's two, one primary that we get compared to in the Oncology Centers of Excellence, ensuring members of Congress and their staff that it's not replicative of other activities within the FDA, that it's additive and that it's a worthwhile endeavor, that it can really solve the very unique challenges that are related to rare diseases. So just again, raising that awareness and really convincing others of the why. And so as you talk, your stories are what help convince people of the why. The technical piece, is something that we can help with, right? In the providing examples of exactly how STAT Act could be implemented within the FDA and why it is not replicative. We can work on those things. We've actually built out a FAQ document on the website, which we'll talk a little bit about later today as well. And some of that content can help you, should you get questions, but we are the ones that can help follow up with those you're meeting with and answer any of those technical questions. What you're so important to convincing them of the why is your story.
Thanks. And beyond asking their members to co-sponsor the STAT Act, what else can patient organizations and individuals do to support the STAT Act?
Great question. Well, we, as part of our Community Congress program, not only it's open to other organizations beyond Community Congress. So if you're a patient organization, then we'd love to hear from you and get you involved in Community Congress. We did issue a support letter to show that there's a really broad group of rare disease organizations that would like to see Congress pass the STAT Act. And so that is still open on a rolling basis. So if you are representing a patient organization that has not signed on to that, I would love to see you do so. And the other thing is digitally, spreading the word, contacting your members of Congress, letting your family know that you would like them to. We have resources on the STAT Act website that you can download and use on social media, and really just help raising awareness about the challenges and the solutions for rare disease therapeutic development like the STAT Act.
Wonderful, thank you. Dylan, I'm going to turn to you with a question. How should advocates discuss the newborn screening bill with their senators in regards to the informed consent amendment?
Thanks. That's a fantastic question. I think it's, as I said, it's the Senate bill does actually match the House bill this session, which we're really excited to see. And so I would say when speaking to them, just urge for their support of the bill as written, and urge the importance of this legislation, and that the amendment will not help the newborn screening programs. And so I would definitely focus on the bill as written. And if the amendment comes up, again, we'll talk a little bit more about this in our deep dive tomorrow. But I would definitely try to focus mostly on the bill itself, because the vast majority of the senators aren't even aware of the amendment at this point. And so I just, again, urge them to co-sponsor the bill, urge them to support the bill as written. And I think that's the best way at the moment to really address the amendment.
Great. And we did have one question about newborn screening in the chat about whether the passage of the bill would impact costs such as premiums.
Yeah, and so obviously I can't comment one way or the other in terms of what individual insurance companies are going to do, but I can comment more about how newborn screening programs are generally covered. And so this is on the state level, and there are newborn screening fees, but they vary a lot by state, and they're also very typically low. So the highest that I'm aware of is in the mid 100s, about 150. And so I would hope that you're not going to see rises in premiums. But in general, newborn screening costs across the country are covered by insurance, both public and private. And so you wouldn't expect to see an increase in that cost to the community. And so in that sense, we wouldn't anticipate any. With the addition of new conditions to the newborn screening panel, you wouldn't see an increase in your insurance cost.
Great, thank you. We received a great question in the chat for Sally, actually, about how advocates can ignite the passion in their members and their senators and representatives when we meet with them. Do you have any advice on how to do that?
I think it's just sharing your experience with the rare disease. From my boss several years ago, he met a young constituent with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and he still has a great relationship with that young man and his father, and because with his whole family really, and because the senator has been so involved in these issues for so long, he's seen like tremendous progress for rare disease and DMD specifically, both through legislation and through scientific innovation and just all sorts of things. And so it's been rewarding for him to see, and it's made him want to, commit to it even more. But it all started with the story and experience that a constituent shared with him. And so I would just encourage you to, share your stories with whether it's staff or the member that you're meeting with, and then follow up and come back the next year and the next year and just build that relationship with them.
Yeah, for sure. Building those relationships is so important, and follow up. We can't say it enough. And then with the Benefit Act would benefit more than the rare disease community. Is how should advocates frame that in their ask? Would that be a helpful point to make to legislators? How would you frame that for them?
I think definitely, and especially now with this past year, we've been seeing how there's many pathways at the FDA for drugs to be authorized or approved, and we see the need for different, not just rare diseases, but for obviously other types of diseases that we need. We need treatments, we need drugs. So I think you need to come in at it from a rare disease angle, but just say that this is like a broader perspective. This would just help, I think, with drug development and approval in general, and I think it would be really great.
Excellent, thank you. Jay, for advocates that will be using the genetic counselor assistant ask, what would you say are like the top 2 talking points that they should bring into their meetings with them?
Yeah, I think the top 2 are, 1, increasing access to providers, right? And especially for places, as we have a discussion in Congress right now about healthcare equity and healthcare access, it's important to make sure that as many people can access healthcare services as we can, and this is one concrete way of improving that, and it's very, very achievable, frankly. The second thing is, as we think about kind of the future of healthcare and how we want the American healthcare system to evolve, increasing access to genetic testing and genetic counseling is going to be a key component of that. We're just kind of at the tip of the iceberg about what genetic testing can do to help improve healthcare outcomes in this country. And so making sure folks can get those results properly interpreted is going to be really important to kind of the future of how we want our healthcare system to look. And, on top of it, right, knowledge is power, as I said before. And, with knowledge, people can take action, right? And with those actions, with any luck, improve their own outcomes. And then, if you're speaking to some of my Republican colleagues, when you can take those actions early, you can save both yourself some money and you can save the healthcare system dollars. And I think that's a powerful message to send for folks who, may not be familiar with genetic testing or may not be familiar with genetic counselors. A lot of folks do, everybody up here is committed to trying to bend the cost curve and make healthcare more affordable. And we think this is something over the long term that can accomplish that.
Excellent. That was going to be my next question, was the cost implications, since that is often a question that advocates get asked when they come into the offices asking. Yeah,
and if you don't mind, I just would piggyback on one thing, and we don't have this information back from the Congressional Budget Office yet. We're certainly asking, and for those, I don't know if people have covered this or you've covered it, the Congressional Budget Office is the nonpartisan scorekeeper that really informs how we work, right? So CBO tells us what things cost, what things might save. Just as a fun fact, Senator Barrasso introduced a bill that was a little similar that allowed physician assistants direct access to Medicare. And that was actually passed in the last Congress. And that legislation, CBO actually said saved money. And so we're not sure, frankly, if CBO is going to feel the same way about this particular bill. There's some slight policy differences. But we were excited last Congress that we did something a little bit similar with a different professional group. And CBO said it actually saved money. I think it was close to $1 billion over 10 years. So anyway.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, that could be a great example to use. And Caitlin, we have a question for you in the chat that when advocates have asked their members to join the caucus, they've been met with a little bit of resistance from offices. Is there anything you would suggest advocates do in these instances or help them prepare for any resistance they might face?
Yeah, sure. So I haven't heard of anyone raising objections with like the topic or the content of the caucus. If members don't want to join, it's usually because some members just don't join caucuses as a policy, but it's never because they don't want to support rare diseases or they don't want to support you, their constituents. So, I would just explain what it is, explain there's, minimal time commitment for them. And then if they still say no, then you can offer to forward them information as it comes to you on various briefings and things like that. And then that'll also help you maintain the relationship with that staffer.
That's great. And the caucus co-chairs, they work together in so many rare disease issues for the rare disease community, from the STAT Act to the Benefit Act. How does the caucus work together to prioritize these issues?
Is it still for me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I mean, I think all of the staff of the caucus, we have a really good working relationship. And we've been able to come together on, various calls and hopefully soon meeting in person again to talk about different bill ideas that our bosses have and, why we think that the caucus co-chair should really take a leadership role, and we're able to, discuss and prioritize that way, and also with meeting with advocates as well.
Excellent, thank you. Well, we've reached the end of today. I want to thank our speakers so much for being with us today, and especially Caitlin and Jay and Sally for taking time out of your busy schedules on the Hill. I know that it's not easy carving out that time in that job, so we really appreciate that. I do want to just send out a little reminder. Our next session today is at 2 p.m. Eastern. and that will be our Preparing for Successful Hill meetings. I'm going to be joined by Sarah Lloyd-Stevenson, who is the director at Bay Grade Drinker Consulting, who is going to talk through a little bit about what to expect and some tips and tricks from her experience. And to join the next session, you just navigate back to the event platform, locate the events page, find today's day, and click on that session, and click the blue Join Now button. So we're going to give you guys a little bit of a break, and then we hope to see you back here at 2 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining us today.